So hey, back with Tony V here from the 10-10 movement, and today I'm speaking to you on this video about the subject of family. Now, it's always said you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. So what's your family experience on that fantastic scale of 0 to 10? 10 being your family life is the best it can be, and 0 is, to be honest, it's absolutely horrid. What number rings out to you when you think of the word family? Now, great if you're doing 10, even 9 obviously is fantastic, 8's, pretty damn good, but 7 or less, bit of a gap there. Now, this was one of my lowest scores when I took the 10-10 life test, or back in 2001. And to be fair, it's one of the most difficult areas for so many people. So why is that? Well, I guess it's because we always feel like we can talk to our family in a way that we can't talk to other people. I often say, would you talk to other people the way you talk to your family? Now, obviously, if you've got a very high score, that's never going to be a problem. But when you've got a very low score, then we can be very picky. It can be, like an intimate relationship, but the dial even turned up a bit higher. So, it depends whether you were if you're brought up by your parents. Something that's quite interesting to look at is, who are you more like? Are you more like your mum, or you're more like your dad? If you weren't brought up by your parents, who brought you up, and who are you more like? Because obviously when we're very little, we're having this experience of family life where we're in a very, what I call, dependent state. We're dependent on our family to feed us, clothe us, to put a roof over our head, so to speak. So in our very early years, we're very, very dependent on these people. And it's the experience that we have with them at that time tends to depict how we have our long-term experience. Because we start to think of this life when we're little as being normal. But if we're getting a very low score, you have to just ask, well, how normal was my life when I was little? So I often say to people, look, if you could remember the house that you were brought up in, maybe the house you were born in, but not necessarily, the one that you remember when you were very little. Imagine taking a walk around that house, see it in your mind's eye, taking a little walk through the house, go into the lounge and the kitchen, have a look around, go to your bedroom, what was that like? Maybe go to your parents' bedroom, the bathroom, have a good look around this place where you spent a lot of time. And then imagine going outside and standing over the road and looking back at that house. Now, if there is a certain words that you could come up with that would describe the energy in that house, what words, would you use to describe it? If there was a sign over the door and you could put 3 words that describe the energy of your house when you were a child, what words would you put on that house? Now, obviously, I've done this with hundreds and hundreds of people, and probably about 80% of people put some quite negative words on that sign. Now, the question then is, if you've got negative words, or maybe you've got 2 positives and 1 negative, or you're all negative. If you're all positive, you don't need to worry, it's all good. But look, if they're negative, then you just have to go to yourself, look, is the words that I'm using to describe what the energy was in that house, are these still prevalent in my body today? So look, we're in the esoteric world, not the science world here, remember, so sort of esoteric, bit of alternatives. This word energy is not something that's easily scientifically provable. But look, if you have that energy still in your world today, could it be that it's the energy inside of you that gives you the experience of your family that you're getting right now? Or it's that when you think about your family through that energy, it makes you behave in a certain way. I'm absolutely certain that's true for me. When I think of my mum, it wasn't that difficult. I mean, many people had way worse childhoods than I did. But when I think of my mum, I was much closer to my dad. Way closer. If I was in trouble, I'd move towards my dad. My mum was a bit more tell me off, And so I was less connected to my mum. But as I think back to that house and I think of the energy that I took on as a child, and then because I wasn't so connected to my mum as I was my dad, I tend to feel that in my later life I was way less connected to my mum. So in other words, I carried that emotionality that I had between me and my mum into my older life when I became independent, and then I got my own family, of course, had my kids and all that sort of stuff. I still feel that as I look back, I never really healed, shall I call it healed? It's a good word, I guess. I never really healed that relationship with my mum until much, much later in my life, because I was unaware of the behaviour that I had around her. So she's sort of my example. You're going to have whatever experience you've had. I guess the most important thing is if you've watched the intimate relationship video, if you haven't, I'm sure there's a button there you could click, then the blame game, in other words, blaming your parents, is never going to work. It's what did I do when I was a kid that got me the experience of my family in the way I did. Now, it doesn't have to be your parents, it could be your brothers and sisters, of course. And then, of course, in your later life, you might have had your own family. So what's your relationship with your kids? And how does that all work? So we've got parents on the one hand and children on the other. But look, it's all as always down to looking at yourself and going, what am I doing that's giving me this experience, this maybe emotional experience when I think of the word family, or the behaviours that go with that thinking. What do I do? Do I stop talking? Do I behave badly? Do I withdraw myself? Do I move towards and have a good punch up, bit of an arguing game with them? What behaviour do I do around my family that's really not working, that if I could really own that behaviour, or own the thinking, or own those negative emotions that perhaps came from our childhood, completely innocently, that we then run those patterns of behaviour, as we sometimes call it, that are preventing me getting back close to my parents. So I've seen people heal unbelievable divisions between their parents by doing this one thing, which is to own what's happened in the past and then move towards the parents or the children, whoever you're disconnected with in your family, but own what you did that gave you that experience. So in other words, we're having a sharing. We're not trying to forgive them, or we're not trying to make them wrong in any way. We're just going, yeah, I can see that what I did got me that experience of you, and if you own that, you give them the opportunity to own what they did. Now, you can't guarantee just because you do it that they're going to own it back. But look, I have seen this pull families together in a way that you wouldn't have ever thought possible. So you can have a non-talking war for like 30 years in a family. For what? For nothing, when you could have had 30 years of connectedness, all because you owned what you did that got you disconnected in the first place. So that's my big thing with families. Really look back and go, how did I take on that thinking behaviour and that behaviour that goes with that? What can I do to swap that around? How could I think of this in a different way? For example, with my mum, she was like brought up, there was 3 children in 3 years. And so I can look back and go, wow, that must have been very tough for my mum. But earlier in my life, I'm just going, well, she was a bit strict with us, shall I say. And look, I now can look back and go, I understand. Maybe I could have been a kid that had a different attitude towards her. I was doing whatever I was doing, being naughty or whatever. And look, that kept me disconnected with her for a long time until, much later in my life. So take what you can from that, see what you can do to move, if you're a low score, what needs to happen to move it to a higher score, to see if you can really improve your connection with your family, so it feels like a much nicer place inside. And for those of you that have got a fantastic family relationship, just maybe share sometimes, share what you do that keeps you in that beautiful magnetic place, because I think my guess is there's a huge number of disconnected families out there that could do with some help and assistance on this one. So that's it from me, Tony V. I'll be back with you on another video real soon. And don't forget, if this has been useful, please share it with your friends. And if you have any questions or comments, put those in the boxes below. And as always, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and that little notification bell so that you get warned of any time a new video comes into the 1010 Movement YouTube channel. So that's it from me this time, Tony V. See you next time. Bye for now.